You're entering Corsi Nation.
This is Jerome Corsi. Today it is Thursday. It's September 4th, 2025. Thank you for joining us on CorsiNation.com. We're in the middle of basically looking at a situation where Russia again is talking about the war, and Putin was in Beijing with this big display of arms by Xi Jinping, and the discussion came around to what was going to happen with regards to the war in Ukraine. And Putin, evidently, in his speech that he gave, said that it was a 4-day trip to China, and he participated in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in the military parade in Beijing, celebrating 80 years of the end of World War II. And he had meetings, wide-ranging meetings with Xi Jinping, the head of India, Turkey, North Korea. It was quite a celebration of those forces that are essentially not aligned with the United States. Now, Putin expressed optimism that the war in Ukraine will end through negotiations if common sense prevails. In other words, he celebrated that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and there were sincere efforts by Donald Trump to find a settlement to the war, and Trump was really working hard to do so. Putin said, "It seems to me that if common sense prevails, it will be possible to agree to an acceptable end to the conflict. That's my assumption." He says, quote, "Especially since we see the mood of the current U.S. administration under President Trump, and we see not just their statements, but their sincere desire to find this solution." Quote, "And I think there's a certain light at the end of the tunnel. Let's see how the situation develops. If not, then we'll have to resolve all the tasks before us by force of arms." Okay, so some of the issues are Putin saying if Zelensky is interested in a meeting, let him come to Moscow. He said he never ruled out a meeting with Zelensky. And again, by military means, I think what's clear is that Putin now feels like he can really take Kiev. And if he takes Kiev, it's endgame. Our ambassador Witkoff has accurately conveyed Russia's position to Trump. And I think Witkoff is doing his best job to kind of convey the situation and see if they can get a trilateral meeting to happen between Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. But the war is going to continue a while longer until all this can get resolved. The basic problem is that Zelensky continues to think, and first of all, Zelensky's making too much money from the war. And all the people with Zelensky are making too much money from the war. And they don't want to quit because if they did, they're going to have to admit defeat. And Europe is going to be facing the fall of a large part of Ukraine to Russia. And Russia will have a much stronger position on the continent. Now, again, another story is surfacing today on oilprice.com, which that Europe is saying that, of course, they want to go back and militarize, and they want to put arms and troops in Ukraine to continue fighting Russia. But Europe faces a $1 trillion rearmament bill as Washington's weighing troop cuts. Okay, so the idea that Europe is going to be able to mount a military offensive against Russia is just pretty much silly. The Russian threat and a U.S. really serious defense review, the United States could draw down forces on the continent, which is under consideration. So a 106-page report by the London-based Institute for Strategic Studies points to gaps across the board in production, intelligence, and military hardware, such as long-range missiles and air and defense missiles. So if Russia was seriously thinking about raising its military budgets and spending billions on defense, this is kind of a watershed moment for Europe. But Europe has EU bonds of backed loans of 150 billion euros have been made available to member states to beef up their forces. But again, they're going to do it on debt. And this is not the way to essentially arm a country, arm Europe to go against Russia. And the idea that we're going to do this is ridiculous. There's no real threat from Russia in Europe. And if the Europeans would realize that the entire conflict with Ukraine and Russia was concocted back with the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton, who did everything they could to antagonize Russia going back to 2013. So this has got a 12-year history now, where Hillary was back with Pinochet accepting money from the oligarchs in Ukraine. And by now, Hillary's probably, even though she stole billions of dollars, I'm sure, millions, hundreds of millions, with the Clinton Foundation, never got indicted, that we're in a situation where she probably needs more money. And Bill Clinton probably needs more money. So the problem is that we've got a tremendous pressure here from NATO and from Zelensky to continue the war, even though it makes no sense at all. They can't win, short of a nuclear war. Russia's not giving back the territory in the east that Russia's gained. That territory was gained by Russia because Zelensky and before him Poroshenko, who was the previous president, were sending in neo-Nazi brigades to attack the freedom fighters in these eastern provinces of Ukraine, which are Russian-speaking. I mean, when Putin took Crimea, Obama did nothing. He sat still. I mean, Obama was probably the real puppet of Putin and the real person compromised by Putin for many different reasons. And again, the Democrats projected onto Trump this lie that Trump was in collusion with Putin, when the reality was that the Obamas and the Clintons, certainly the Obama was directly doing much of the bidding for Putin and was the one who was really compromised. Obama was virtually a Putin agent. When we had the gas attacks in Syria, Assad was gassing his own people. We reported on this going back more than a decade. And the Obama cabinet wanted to retaliate against Assad. Obama said, no, that had to go to Congress. Well, nothing happened. And essentially, Obama gave a green light to Assad to gas his own people, which was in support of what Russia wanted. Obama also did a deal with Iran, which allowed Iran ultimately to continue building nuclear weapons. And again, it was because of Russia's support of Iran. Obama and Kerry were both acting against the interests of the United States in protecting Israel. Now, again, Israel is taking over the Gaza, and I don't think Trump is stopping him. Trump is giving him a green light to do so. And Trump is pressing hard to settle the war in Ukraine, but Zelensky is stubbornly in the way. The only way that we're going to get anything here done is if Trump just stops funding Zelensky and stops sending him weapons. Let the Europeans do it if they want to, but the Europeans will run out of gas pretty quickly. There's a lot of talk. Macron says, let's get ready to send boots on the ground to Ukraine. I keep saying that the French would be better off to try to run a transgender military parade down the Champs-Élysées with troops in dresses and lipstick than they would be to launch a military presence in Ukraine that would be able to stand up to Russia. Okay, I want to go to a few other stories now. I want to take up on the what was happening in terms of the Trump putting military into Washington, D.C., looking at doing the same in California, and Chicago certainly targeted. Now, yesterday there was a leaked memo from the Department of Homeland Security that indicates that the Department of Homeland Security is requesting military support for ICE and this ERO, the Enforcement and Removal Operations for the city of Chicago. It means like Los Angeles, the military will be in Chicago supporting DHS operations. increasingly Trump is looking at the military taking over the management of these democratic cities. And Democratic mayors are going nuts because they know that what Trump brings in the military will get law and order in the cities again. But the cities have so deteriorated under Democratic rule that we're now faced with the only solution being National Guard and U.S. military patrolling our cities. The Democrats have done nothing but destroy America, and their whole agenda is the destruction of America. That's part of the major part of the problem. And with the comprehension that we're facing here, a situation in which every major U.S. city, democratically run, has been driven into the ground. And now we see in New York, this Mondami is still gaining endorsements, and he'll be a further pressure to deteriorate the economic base of New York City. When you've got homelessness in the streets, you got them defecating in the sidewalk, when you've got homeless with drugs openly doing them in our major cities, protected by the Democratic mayors, protected by the Obama prosecutors and judges, and Soros-funded attorney generals who will not prosecute crime. They look at the criminals as the victims. Well, with this situation, you've got insanity. And the only way you're going to get order is with the military coming in and restoring law and order. And Trump, I think, is preparing to send the military into as many situations as he needs to in order to secure the country. What this memo says, and it was a leaked memo, but again, it's authentic. The types of situations to get an efficient and secure handling of aliens, removing the illegal immigrants in accordance with federal regulations and aligned with ICE's ongoing efforts to address public safety and national security, they're going to need the assistance. DHS is going to need the assistance of the military. So the DoD facilitates the use of Naval Station Great Lakes 30 days of operation in the Chicago metropolitan area to help the advance party which arrived on September 2nd, 2025. So this is underway. And Chicago will soon be like Washington. It'll be under Trump's management with federal troops involved. And Chris, why don't you come on? I think we're facing a couple threshold situations here in which Trump is going to have to, I think, resort to some extraordinary powers in order to restore order into the country, because the Democrats are now self-destructing. They're supporting crime. They're supporting, Venezuelan drug gangs. The Democrats are doing gender dystopia. The Democrats are insane.
Oh, they know their policies are a failure. What they're trying to do is capture that little base that'll always follow them, maybe the 30%, and hoping that there'll be enough virtue signalers in the middle to follow them. And there is a very strong demographic that follows the Democrats that kind of goes for all this woke garbage, still will, and think better of themselves for doing so, despite what it does to American cities and the country overall. This is that demographic of Chardonnay sipping, affluent white suburban women who, again, like these politicians, rarely or don't at all have to live among anybody who suffers from the consequences.
Well, the evil is so entrenched, and the corruption is so entrenched. The drug hold of these cities, the drugs that have been made available by open borders with the Biden administration and Obama beforehand. The open borders have just been open. Sinaloa drug cartel, China with fentanyl, China with, the amount of money laundering going on in the world right now is phenomenal. If you want to oppose the United States, you want to oppose Satan, get all the money you want. Soros is not lacking for money. The Democratic Party Act Blue still has money flowing through it, even though it's a money laundering operation. Yet the investigation of it is slow. And it's not, we've had Tulsi Gabbard reveal the Obama coup. Okay, where's the indictments? Nothing happens. That's the problem, is that the entrenched evil, the entrenched forces of darkness are going to be very difficult to dislodge. Chris?
And what happens is they also convince a good number of well-meaning people to think they're on the good side, and that's the manipulative force that these evil people have. They have, of course, a media which is happy to oblige, trying to make them look better, and making the other side look like the evil side.
Well, that's a major part of the problem. And so I even see this Pope Leo is now taking pictures with the LGBT leaders, outspoken leaders, and again, virtue signaling that he is not going to deviate from Francis' agenda. Pope Francis was clearly LGBT. And so if you've got, they marched, they had a large group of LGBT come into St. Peter's Basilica with a rainbow cross. Okay, now, again,
That's stolen imagery, right?
yeah, I mean,
The rainbow is not done done naively. By the way, obviously, it was a stolen. The rainbow was a Christian symbol for a long time, and that's why it was stolen. Notice that very well-meaning religious symbols have been stolen and bastardized by the left over the last many centuries. Again, we can talk about how the rainbow was, but look at the swastika. That was a symbol of peace. And
yes, it
right,
originally in the Himalayas,
right.
and
I believe it was Hindu
it has a
or
long
Buddhist.
history
Yes.
in Buddhism, etc. It has a long history. But the key, and also, I mean, red and blue. Well, the Democrats were originally the red states, and the Republicans were the blue, but the Democrats didn't like being called the red states because they
Right.
knew it reminded everybody of communism.
And people don't remember that. This switch was made, either somewhere in the '80s or '90s. The switch was made subtly.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was made intentionally.
right. Was subtly but intentionally. The idea was, again, as the left, as the Democrats became more communist socialist, they thought ahead and had the media comply, of course, and try to dissociate them with the color red. Yes.
Yeah, there's also a report out. There's a report being written on Gateway Pundit today. It shows that the European Commission, which is an unelected branch of the European Union, they're using European taxpayer money to promote its political agenda, under the guise of EU values. So they're funding non-governmental organizations and think tanks to spread its propaganda. So, this is again being done worldwide. There's an enormous amount of money going into supporting these lies of one world government, the green agenda. So the EU funded more than 4,400 non-governmental organizations between 2014 and 2023, but more than 40% of the total sum given to these NGOs, or 3.3 billion, went to just 30 organizations. Okay, and the bureaucracy is not funding NGOs to feed people or to advance, a broadly agreed upon social agenda. It's to protect its own interests and to protect the oligarchs who really run the EU. So Peter Schweitzer is out saying the reality is that it's more like an extortion model. It's more like the mafia. The mafia shows up at a grocery store in America and says, you might want to take out insurance with us, because if you don't, your shop may be accidentally burned down. Well, in this scenario, the government and government officials in the United States and Europe threaten and pressure corporations, people who do not share their political views. Okay, so that's, if you don't want to come along with um, the agendas for DEI, your corporation is going to suffer. Okay, and these kinds of, with the amount of money these unelected officials and bureaucracy have to spend, getting it rooted out is going to be very difficult. And the Department of Justice is moving forward, but again, the frustration is, when do we get some indictments? When do we get some accountability for what's being released daily? And that's, again, it's got to come, or the MAGA agenda is going to be extremely anxious to see Donald Trump get results. We've had a lot of the discussion. We've had now releases of information. Now we need results. Trump is going to take to the Supreme Court a motion to quickly overturn this federal court decision saying that he cannot administer these wide-ranging global tariffs, which appear to be working. Of course, the deep state wants our jobs overseas. They want the American middle class destroyed. They want to see the cities ruined. They want to see destruction. I pointed this out in my book on the truth about global war. I mean, the truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy. And the left is destroying Western civilization essentially in order to prop up what it sees as its new utopia. But the new utopia is not going to be what the left thinks it's going to be. We're going to face anarchy, and the potential of nuclear war with these regional conflicts increases daily. It's still present in Ukraine, depending upon what happens in Ukraine. But for instance, in the EU, Germany, reports are that open borders, job losses, and economic collapse and skills shortage are causing an economic collapse. Okay, this is by Thomas Colby again, who's doing some very good writing, saying the ideology of open external borders has become a core element of Brussels policymaking. When Angela Merkel extended her 2015 invitation to millions, it merely confirmed a policy all wrong embedded. This claim that had anything to do with combating skills shortage was always a convenient fiction. They're not combating skills shortage. But what's happening is since 2019, 700,000 jobs have vanished from Germany's private economy, and Germany's economy is now in free fall. During that same period, the government added 500,000 public sector jobs, which means that the real destruction in the productive economy totals around 1.2 million jobs. Okay, so the transfer of private jobs in the private economy in Germany to public jobs is not positive because it just compounds the debt that the German government faces and the EU faces. And Germany is committing suicide by closing its nuclear power plants. And then what happens is that the government officials fudge the numbers. So millions of unemployed, both Germans and migrants, are now plaguing the entire German economy. And hundreds of thousands are hidden in these short-term work schemes, training programs, or statistical loopholes designed to minimize the numbers of unemployed. The workers exist, yet the media and public never tire of repeating the warning of an acute shortage of skilled labor. Well, again, the German economy warns of a shortage of 530 skilled workers, claiming competitiveness is dramatically endangered. But at the same time, the practical reality is that the recruitment of skilled personnel has never been a responsibility of management in Germany. If the companies themselves become politically oriented and operate under political DEI and ESG and all these other leftist propositions, you're not going to have economic growth or vitality. Now, again, I'm warning everybody, this continues to be reflected in the world economy. Let's just take a look again at gold and silver. And gold has now crossed the $3,500 an ounce threshold. Gold is trading today at $3,561.70, and silver at $41.16. Now, I'm begging you to take me seriously on this. I've been talking about this since gold was under $2,000 an ounce, which was only last year. Gold is going to hit $4,000 an ounce, and silver is probably going to hit $45 an ounce, certainly $43 an ounce, I think, by the end of the year. Now, we continue to support, and our major sponsor remains Swiss America. And Kristi, we'll go to Swiss America. I want people to understand that they can get this Walking Liberty $50 offer if they become a new customer of Swiss America. Talk to Swiss America. Talk about gold and silver investing. You don't need millions of dollars. You can buy 250 of these coins for virtually what they're worth in silver. It's a lost leader to Swiss America. It gets you into at least owning some real metal. If you call Swiss America, and please do, the phone number to call them is toll free, 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. Write it down and call Swiss America, 1-800-519-6268. You can also get a copy of the free book we've written, which is Coming True, How the Coming Global Crash Will Create an Historic Gold Rush. Please get a copy of the book. Read it. There's white papers, written white papers on the BRICS. All of these are free. You can get a lot of information to educate yourself on what's coming. Because in the coming world, we're going to see a major collapse of these fiat currencies. It's way beyond being a possibility now. I think it's going to be a certainty that in 2026, we're going to face a global economic crisis. I'll be talking about it, been talking about it, I'll continue to talk about it to warn you to get ready for it. Okay, so we're seeing also the BRICS nations are taking an increased ascendancy, and these non-Western media are at least reflecting and holding up and understanding that, for instance, the summit that occurred, this recent summit that occurred in Moscow, in Beijing, brings these countries together in a way that the West's de facto monopoly over global governance is no longer assured. And so therefore, the interests of India, the interests of China economically, and China has had a surge in its stock market prices, but the underlying economy in China still is very weak. Okay, so what you're having is a situation where we're not getting the accurate news reported. That's the problem. We're just not getting enough news in the United States that really reflects what's going on. And, the fundamental nature of politics is going to be determined by economic strength and military strength. And China right now is having a stock market surge, but it masks their economic decline. It's a slowing economy in China. The real estate sector is collapsing under massive debt and bank deposit rates being below 1%. So, as investors go into the stock market trying to get some gains in China, it is an inflated stock market. So Chinese have traditionally put their savings into property, but that market's imploding. It means there's huge losses being taken. Okay, so many investors are shifting funds to Hong Kong, where they purchased 78 billion worth of Chinese company shares so far in 2025, and that's expected to reach 110 billion by year's end. It fuels the stock market surge, but the underlying economy and slow growth in China means that those investors could lose a lot of that money. Same is happening in the United States with the stock market at 45,000. It's really time to take gains and perhaps go back into the stock market. But taking gains, I think, is really now critical. Okay, now in the international economy is not stable right now, and of what we've been fighting, the entrenched interests are still fighting back. And President Trump, well, as much as he's doing to reverse the situation, and to get the world a problem that these entrenched interests, as you see in the judges fighting back. Okay, the reports of both the nations, that are in all the nations in the BRICS nations, continue to call for dropping the U.S. dollar in international trade, and that's likely to continue being a push to bypass the dollar. And Xi Jinping and the BRICS leaders have floated the idea of creating a BRICS currency. It's not happened yet, but the idea is continuing to be surfaced. And eventually it will happen. Eventually the United States dollar, if we do not contain our debt, if we don't contain our spending, is going to implode. So definitely call Swiss America. Definitely make sure you get some gold and silver if you want to maintain your purchasing power. The middle class of the United States is seriously at risk of economic collapse. And the steps taken by Donald Trump right now to stabilize the country, fighting the judiciary, moving for voter integrity, I think we're going to see an increase. Ultimately, I think Donald Trump will issue an executive order on election integrity that will require him to say a national security emergency exists, and he'll have to invoke Article 2 powers as commander-in-chief to fix our elections, which will drive the Democrats insane. We're going to see the Democratic Party go insane as it realizes more than half of all of its representatives in Congress could be lost if we can prevent cheating in the 2026 election. And this is shaping up to be a test for 2026 as the decisive year in which either the deep state wins and defeats Trump, or Trump, even with the use of the military, manages to take back control of the country for the people of the United States. But with the other nations of the world organizing and Putin saying he'll just take Ukraine if Ukraine doesn't want to come to terms, and the world needs to go to nuclear war or the brink of nuclear war over that takeover, I think Putin's happy with it. I think Putin feels he's got nuclear superiority right now. Probably has first strike capability. If Putin realizes that and pushes the envelope, doesn't feel a need to really compromise, we're not out of the woods yet in Ukraine. And the situation in Israel, and also with Netanyahu increasingly determined to take over and control Gaza, also has the potential to escalate into a very, very difficult situation. And the Catholic Church is not moving away from LGBT with Pope Leo. It's just more subtly endorsing the same ideas of Pope Francis. Catholic Church hierarchy is equally, the Catholic Church has become a homosexual pedophilia organization. I'm sorry, but that's the way it has become. And I don't see steps being taken to root it out. I see steps being taken to have a pause with a pope that's not so in your face, but is still on the same ideological agenda. I continue to say, in the end, God always wins. And with the last thing I want to point out is that, and Chris, let's end with that one clip you have on the all of the Epstein victims coming out and talking yesterday in a press conference and saying they'll release their own client list. And Chris, you want to play that one clip, and then we'll wrap up the show for today. Chris,
Good morning. This is my 5th year in Congress, and this is the largest press conference that I've seen since I've been here. And this is because this is an issue that matters so much to Americans. This is an issue that doesn't have political boundaries. It's an issue that Republicans and Democrats should never fight about. As a matter of fact, it's such an important issue that it should bring us all together. It's grieved me to watch the arguments and debates take place among my colleagues and even the administration. I think this is something that was worth fighting for. You see, the women behind me are going to tell you stories that you've never heard before. These are unimaginable horrors that they've lived with for their entire lives since they were very, very young. But these are also similar stories that many children, teenagers, women, and even men are enduring nightmares right now as we speak. You see, these women have been fighting since the 1990s. I heard one woman tell us yesterday since 1996, and they have carried with them shame. But I want to tell you something. The shame does not fall on these brave, courageous women. The shame falls on every single person that coldly turned a blind eye to their abuse. The shame falls on every single person that enabled it. The shame falls on every single person that took money to continue it. And the shame falls on the people in power over the past several decades that protected the monster, Jeffrey Epstein, and his cabal that continued a nightmare. Those people deserve the shame. And today we are coming forward and we are going to fight like hell for these women, because we have to fight like hell for those that are enduring sexual abuse and are living in a prison of shame. Anyone that is being abused, it is not your fault. You should live with no guilt or fear or shame. All of the fault belongs to the evil people that do these things to the innocent. This is the most important fight we can wage here in Congress, is fighting for innocent people that never receive justice. And the women behind me have never received justice. And do you want to know why? It's because Jeffrey Epstein somehow was able to walk among the most rich, powerful people, not only in America, but foreign countries. Yesterday, I heard countries like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and even Israel and other countries. The truth needs to come out, and the government holds the truth. The cases that are sealed hold the truth. Jeffrey Epstein's estate holds the truth. The FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA holds the truth. And the truth we are demanding come out on behalf of these women, but also as a strong message to every innocent child, teenager, woman, and man that is being held captive in abuse. This should never happen in America, and it should never be a political issue that
All right, I think we've heard the basic commentary here, and what is clear is that the victims are going to speak out, and Donald Trump needs to get on the right side of this issue. I don't know why Donald Trump is being so resistant to this information coming out, but it's not going to be able to be stopped. And the sexual abuse that has gone on in this country with pedophilia and sex trade, child organ harvesting, the involvement of our CIA is a horrendous evil and horrendous crime. And while it's difficult to break the story, we have a reluctant and resistant media. We're going to break the story. It's going to come out. And I'm going to champion here the release of this information and making it abundantly clear that the Obama administration was deeply involved in the evil, promoting it. Our banks were deeply involved in promoting it. You're going to find an international money laundering scheme here of massive proportions. Foreign governments, the amount of evil money that's floating around the world is just enormous. I continue to say, in the end, God always wins. And God's going to win here too, but it's going to be a battle. And I implore you also to get on your knees, and the spirit of 2 Chronicles 7:14, ask God to forgive us for letting the world get to this condition. And God will hear the prayer and God will heal our land, but it's not going to be pretty. But the point is, the justice of God will be swift and it will be severe. And we must implore God to forgive us for not having done what we could do to have prevented this before it got to this level of magnitude. But in the end, God always wins, and God will win here too. Dr. Jerome Corsi, thank you for joining us on CorsiNation.com. We're doing podcasts every weekday. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. God bless.